название открытого лектория «Технологии в современной культуре в самом широком понимании этого слова». Собственно, мероприятие открытого лектория объединены идеей в том, что технологии, современные технологии способны взаимодействовать с культурой и, по сути, меняют культуру. Потому что инструменты, которые художники, современные художники получают, они из мира современных технологий. Собственно, цифровой мир наступил, и никто не удивляется студиям, построенным в спальне. Любой саунд-продюсер, начинающий саунд-продюсер, может сделать хит, находясь у себя дома. Большие студии оказываются не удел, оказываются не нужны. И так происходит не только в музыке, так происходит повсеместно. Компьютерные игры также можно создать у себя дома. И доступность создания визуального и даже интерактивного контента привела к потребности создавать их звуковой ряд, оживлять эти визуальные интерактивные миры с помощью звука. И профессия саунд-дизайнера с этого момента становится все более и более актуальной. Как художники, саунд-дизайнеры всегда находятся в поиске новых красок для реализации своих идей. И я рад, что у нас с вами сегодня есть возможность пообщаться с людьми, которые находятся на острие технологий, оставаясь при этом творцами и художниками. И первым я хочу представить Джошуа Рейса, профессора звукорежиссуры в Центре цифровой музыки Лондонского университета Королевы Марии. Я вычту огромное количество работ. Давайте поприветствуем Джошуа. У нас с вами Себастьян Фрост, звукорежиссер сотен уникальных работ, театральных работ. Театральный звукорежиссер, обладатель премии Тони за лучший саунд-дизайн. Анас Рафасетер, композитор и аудиохудожник. В ее музыкальной карьере, мне кажется, огромное количество работ, сотни работ. Было все, от написания музыки до продюсирования альбомов и сейчас уже исследования в области звукового дизайна. Он профессор синтеза звука и музыкальной и компьютерной науки, программный директор бакалавриата по направлению звуковой дизайн Берлинской школы популярных искусств. Поприветствую. Я бы рад, если вы, друзья, расскажете, как вы видите мир звукового дизайна, потому что профессии меняются. Расскажите, чем вы занимаетесь, чтобы аудитории было больше понятно, что за мир саунд-дизайна у нас. И я попрошу первым ответить на вопрос Джошуа.
Can you all hear me okay now? Yes. Okay, thanks. So as mentioned, I'm a professor of audio engineering and quite involved in taking innovative technologies from the lab, from research to achieve impact, especially in the audio world. So I'll mention a couple of things that I've been involved in, and the first is quite a few years old now. I had a researcher working with me he had a background as a sound system engineer. So for big festival shows, the sound system, the arrangement of the speakers, there were wonderful technologies that could help the process. But the sound engineer behind the mixing console was still turning the knobs and trying to assess everything themselves without any assistive technologies. So he thought, could we create a system that could do that sort of thing? And we worked on it, and essentially the answer is yes. You can create intelligent systems, part AI-based, but part just knowledge engineering. Imbue those systems with the knowledge of how sound engineers work, what they're doing when multiple sounds are coming in and they need to determine how they should interact to create the best mix of the sound. And it brings up very interesting questions of where is the line between creativity and technical challenges in sound engineering, and how far can a computer go in automating the process, and how far should it go in automating the process. And that resulted in a company called Lambda, which now provides an automatic mastering service. So we delivered mixing, but then there was a strange ride as the technology went through the stages of commercialization, and So there's a lot going on now with bringing new technologies for music, and in that particular case for music production, for what the sound engineer is doing. But there's very few new intelligent systems for sound design in a non-musical context. And the problem there is the way the industry works is very reliant on use of samples. So you need the sound of a dragon roaring, you search through sound effects, sample libraries to find the closest sound you can find and use that in the production. That's actually a very uncreative way to work. The alternative, which I expect we might hear a bit about, is sound synthesis or procedural audio, where you generate the sounds from the ground up, like working with a recipe. Take the ingredients and spices, and so from basic sound elements you create something new and different. And that represents a different way to work, potential transformation of the industry. So that's what researchers working with me have been working on for the past couple years, and we formed a startup company based on this. So I'm hoping we'll be able to show the video now. Might be the appropriate time.
Давайте посмотрим, где ролик.
So every sound in that video, except the music, was generated on a computer. There were no use of samples of recorded sounds whatsoever. And I particularly like that direction of work because it's actually making the whole process more creative. The sound designer is able to manipulate, to create new sounds rather than use existing sounds. And I think that's one of the directions that sound design will go in the future. So that's probably more than 5 minutes for me.
Thank you so much, Josh. Sebastian, what do you think about this? You are from theatrical projects?
Absolutely.
Да, извините. Вы из театрального мира, и на самом деле у вас огромный опыт в иммерсивных шоу, то есть в расположении звуковых объектов в пространстве, в реал-тайме, по сути, в реальном времени. Это процедурное аудио, что это за технология?
Mostly my job entails the manipulation of live audio. Obviously, if I'm working on a musical or a play, then the generation of sounds absolutely is a key part of that. Because what I specialise in is finding different ways for people to hear what is being performed, whether it's an orchestra, an actor, or any other kind of performer.
Окей, может быть, Вы можете показать несколько фрагментов того, что вы делаете?
Well, when I started doing sound design, my mother, funnily enough, was one of my biggest judges, and she only ever appreciated a show that I did the sound design for if she couldn't tell that there was any sound involved in it at all. She was a big fan of something that sounded natural and unamplified. But obviously that's not something that's particularly suitable, especially for a modern day audience that's more used to cinema and other concerts and louder sound. So I've spent a lot of time over the last couple of years looking at and developing new technologies to help change the way that you listen to things. And one of the projects that I first started on doing this with was a show called the Edinburgh Tattoo, which takes place every year in Edinburgh. Trying to find a picture for you. Oh, there we go. So it takes place outdoors and it involves lots of musicians, lots of performers. In this case it's around about 1,000 performers, and there are marching bands, and we also have, you can see in the upper right hand side there, we have a choir and we have a rhythm section and a seated orchestra. And one of the challenges this brings, that even in 1,100 musicians can sound surprisingly quiet, especially when you move up to arenas and bigger stadiums. So we have to make them louder, but introducing the amplified elements, whether it's a marching band or whether it's an orchestra, provides some pretty serious challenges in how do you make all those things sound together right at the same time and reach each audience member's ears at the same time. So as a little demonstration, we can see the type of performers that we have on the show. And here we'd have, for example, a moving band that are marching around. This space, for example, is in a stadium. It's quite large. It's about 100 metres long, performance space by about 60 metres wide. And if we have a moving band playing together with the choir and the rhythm section you can see in the bottom there, then the amount of time it takes the acoustic sound from the marching band to arrive at an audience member is continuously variable compared to the amount of time it takes from the sound out of the loudspeaker to get to the audience member. So we have to employ various technologies to make those things happen at the same time. And of course the marching band are always moving around. So when they're in a different position, these times and values are going to continually change. And it's really important because you can hear the acoustic sound of that marching band. And if the sound from the choir and the rhythm section is not in time, then it sounds pretty awful. So over the last few years, a few companies are beginning to develop technology to deal with this. You can see here the stadium and the arrangement of loudspeakers around there. And this is a piece of software called Timax. That recently we wrote some new software to that we can automatically place loudspeakers on a plan, and it will calculate using its algorithms the amount of time it takes for each sound we give it to get to each loudspeaker and therefore each audience member in turn. And in addition to this, that's been happening over the last year or so is a thing called object-based mixing, often known as spatial audio as well. And the difference here is with a normal sound system like this one here, all of the sounds that are being produced get squished into one channel and come out of each loudspeaker. It's the same thing out of each loudspeaker. And so wherever you're sitting in the auditorium, you're always going to hear what you're hearing from the closest loudspeaker to you. And so this development of spatial audio and object-based systems in the live field has replaced all of this. This is huge amounts of spreadsheets. Great fun to produce. We spend days and days doing to calculate the different times and levels required for each particular position on the field. Thankfully, that's now a thing of the past. And with this is the production that we did last month in Sydney, where we employed some of these technologies just for the very first time on this scale. So a few of the manufacturers that have been doing this that are coming out on the market now, we have Timax was the one I've been using on the tattoo, the pictures you've seen there. Lisa from a company called Acoustic, and Astrospatial is a company from Holland, and D&B is a loudspeaker manufacturer from Germany, and they've all been creating these new object-based systems. And on one production I've been launched this system on. It was the first show ever to use an object-based mixing system. It's a show called The Last Ship, written by Sting. And in this case, every single channel, every single radio microphone that the actor wore, and every single microphone on the band gets routed into the system individually and out of each loudspeaker individually. So the effect is you always feel like the sound is coming from where it is being produced. It doesn't matter where that person is on the stage. So each person you can see in this photograph here, it sounds like the sound is coming from that person, not from the loudspeaker next to you. So that's really good in terms of producing acoustic effects and other bits and pieces like that. And one of the biggest things that's actually made this much, much easier to do, so obviously with a musical with a cast of 22 people plotting their positions manually across the stage has been a time-consuming job. As you can see here, we've got a particular path of one of the actors in one particular part of the show. And for this production, I had to create 4,000 of those cues, one for each movement of each member of the cast. So that's a fairly time-consuming process. It also means that the actor has to be in the right place, not only because to find their light, but also to find their sound. And it also meant that I've spent many hours in hotel rooms, sitting there with computers and hotel room TV screens, watching videos and plotting them through. So the greatest new development now in the last few months has been the advent of a tracking system. So you can see here very small trackers, they are little tags this big, and we will surround the performance space with sensors that geolocate their position. So each performer now can wear one of these tags. The computer will then relay that information into the positioning system, and we no longer have to worry about where the performer is going to be. And of course that's a huge difference to me and our workflow and things, because instead of losing rehearsal time to concentrate on where was that person at this particular point, that all happens automatically, and we can look after the more creative aspects of it much, much quicker. And of course this technology is really scalable, and I've been using it on a few shows over the last 12 months, including a stunt car show we had out in Macau, and again all the cars had trackers and positions, so the sounds of the cars and the sounds of the performers and the aeroplane you can see in the picture there always moved in the time of the sound moved with the object as it did. And effectively what this does, this is immersive audio, but it's not immersive in the way of surrounding you with loudspeakers. It's more about removing the technology, the barrier that that technology can sometimes put between an audience and the performance. And it really brings the performance much closer to the audience.
Я вижу, что все больше аудиопрограммирования занимает время саунд-дизайнера, нежели создание саунд-дизайна. Это очень интересная тема. Может быть, у Ханнеса есть на этот счет свое мнение?
On the one hand, we are facing more and more technologies and more sophisticated ideas. On the other hand, I think it's very important to come back to the very basics. Of course, my work is inspired from very many different artists. One is David Byrne from Talking Heads, who writes in his book, "Music is made of sound waves that we encounter at specific times and places. They happen, we sense them, and then they are gone. The music experience is not just those sound waves, but the context in which they occur as well." I think this is very important, and that's why I like to talk about audio design. It's all about what we hear, what we are listening to, what we perceive, and what is our sonic experience about. And that is definitely a difference from the sound itself. My book is called Audio Design. From a marketing perspective, this was not a real good idea. It would sell much better as a sound design book, but I think audio is just the right title. If we talk about the future, we should always think about the past. And I think it's obvious that we have these marvelous paintings just like Mona Lisa, and we have plenty of artifacts visually and haptic things, but we know very, very little about sonic events of the past. I think we as humans are used for centuries that we can't touch the sounds, that we can't catch the sounds. So within sound and sonic experience, sonic perception, there's some kind of a now and never aspect, which to my opinion is very, very important. But during the last few decades, we entered the digital area, and so we are confronted with the so-called digital perception. Bill Drummond summed this up very perfectly in an interview he gave us a couple of years ago at the Composers Forum in Mittersill, a small village in the Austrian Alps, and asked the technician to play this sound file.
At the same time, I got myself an iPod. Now, theoretically, it's when it's first. Theoretically, I think the iPod was the greatest gift ever for music lover. I mean, you could have every piece of recorded music you could conceivably want to listen to there in your pocket, and you can listen to it wherever, whenever, while doing almost whatever. But within a month of having that iPod and all these pieces of music on, you know, and my taste has broadened out over the years. And I'd be hearing a few bars, you know, and then I'd pick through something else, and there was never. And I thought, is this what happens with age? Your taste becomes jaded, and then I thought, no, I noticed that teenagers do the same thing, just picking through. I thought, something is changing in our relationship with music, hugely, hugely. And I love it when things change, especially when one feels uncomfortable with that change. I started seeing recorded music as one of the main art forms of the 20th century. And as the technology to record music had evolved through the 20th century, it had seduced almost every form of music, whether it was classical, you know, pre-20th century music, world music, jazz, contemporary classical music. It was all wanting to become recorded. Yes, me, please. Yeah. And that somehow reduced it all to one genre. Whether you're listening to the Well-Tempered Clavichord, okay, or to the latest German techno, it all had become this thing that you can sit and you can put on any time, and the relation, and you can switch off when you want. Music was no longer about time, place, occasion.
Music was no longer about time, place, occasion, and we started to consume music in a very passive way. And so in our work we would like to bring the people back to play music. So we are interested in sonic interaction. We did several projects in the field of game-based music, bringing people back to interact with music. We also use this knowledge for several other kinds of sonic interaction. So for instance, we use sonic feedback in physiotherapy to improve gait rehabilitation. Please play the short video.
Eine herkömmliche Schuheinlagesohle, eine spezielle Software und 7 Sensoren.
We have these shoes equipped with several sensors.
Und wenn ich den jetzt aktiviere, dass es Druck darauf ausübe, sehe ich,
We send the sensor data to the smartphone.
Punkt, der ihm zeigt, es kommen Daten an am Handy. Für diesen Sensor, die ich dann auch wiederum in der Simulation höre.
And depending on the movement of the patient, which through his problems with the gait, we are proving several sounds. So we help the people to recover with the gait again after some injuries and accidents. Another thing which is very important for me is I want to bring back sight site-specific, time-specific aspects of sound and music. So, for instance, we did this project Stadtkunst. On the course of one single day, we are conducting several short videos and sounds, field recordings, and in the end of this day, we go into the stage and remixing these kind of things, just like a very ongoing, long reverberation of this day. This is an extract from what we did in the city of Belfast. Another project in this kind of thing was the Boxberg Symphony. We did this in a very huge 600-meter long turbine hall of a huge power plant. The orchestra played Baroque orchestral music from Johann Sebastian Bach. There was the silent movie from Fritz Lang from the 1920s, up-to-date digital technologies. And again, this was a really strong interrelation of time and space. I had to remix in real time the orchestra pieces of Johann Sebastian Bach, which sounded like that. Please play the sound. To share is, of course, I'm thinking a lot about soundscapes and our sonic environments, and this is always getting louder, faster, more intense. And to my opinion, it's necessary to bring people back to some more focused listening. And in this sense, I rediscovered the classical music halls for classical contemporary for classical music. As the space where people are really focused on listening and they are not disturbed from anything else. So I'm still doing some compositions for chamber orchestras, for instance, which sounds like that. Just please play the last thing from my chamber symphony. So to sum up, digital technology is very important for me, but it's the human being who counts, it's the context, it's our sonic perception and experience which counts and which is important. Thanks.
С одной стороны, возврат обратно к музыке, которую мы потеряли, а с другой стороны, ее переосмысление через мир современных технологий. И я хотел бы услышать Марку, который использует в своих театральных перформансах также современные технологии.
Hello. Yes, my name is Marco. I'm the head of the study program Audio Design from the Berlin School of Popular Arts. And yes, my field of research is related to human-computer interaction in context to sound. And yes, I will show you now a video, and then we can talk about that topic, what does it mean. And can we play that video? bachelor thesis from a student of mine, and it's called Contraction. It's a biofeedback system, musical performance controller. And so he used something like a commercial product. It's called Mayo, Mayo controller. So where you can translate myoelectrical signals. It's a contraction of the muscles, and you get the expression of the muscles, and it detects also the orientation in space. And that's a direct connection, and through that direct connection he created a physical modeling synthesizer, and through that physical modeling synthesizer he expressed his emotion or his movement through space. And that's a direct, so what is really important is this direct connection. That means when he makes a movement, he immediately hears a sound, and also the next movement will be related to the first movement. And so that makes it quite important, and that shows you also the possibilities of sensor-based new technology and what you can do related to for performative aspect. So Atao Tanaka worked there for a long time in this field. He's also from Queen Mary. And what's also related is, for example, Marco Donnarumma, who did also his PhD at Queen Mary. And that are some people who works on the field and quite intense and create new controllers also. And so the thing is, you could use regular custom or commercial products and use it as a controller, but you can also create new things, for example, through the Arduino platform, and develop new and so it is possible for everyone that everyone can can create a new controller and new interfaces to interact with music. And yes, that's a field of research where I'm working on. And yeah, audio design is quite big. For example, in our study program, we have this field of music technology. Another aspect is audio engineering, and another aspect is sound design and composition. And so it's a broad field, and as an audio designer, you need to know all of these fields and also something more. Yes. Thank you.
Готовясь к этой сессии, я вспомнил свое прошлое. В прошлом я был саунд-дизайнером, аудиодизайнером, до этого аудиопрограммистом, программистом, сталкивался с компьютерными играми. На последние 15 лет я занимаюсь звуком и музыкой и образованием. И вижу ряд огромных изменений в этой индустрии. Но, готовясь к этой сессии, я подготовил всего 4 вопроса, которые хотел бы задать вам. На мой взгляд, они сильно отражают то, что является точкой соприкосновения программирования, звукотворчества, искусства и дизайна. Компьютерные технологии сейчас проникают все глубже и глубже в музыкальный мир, мы это видим. Компьютер помогает подобрать аккорды, компьютер помогает микшировать звук.